Good evening, folks, and welcome back to the Activist Show on Socialist Telly. Joining me tonight to talk about their election campaign in Wakefield, I'm joined by the Northern Independence Party candidate, Christopher Jones. Welcome, Chris. Thank you for joining us. How are you, and how has your campaign been going?
Yeah, thank you very much. The campaign seems to be going really well. We're getting a great response on the, on the doorsteps. People are, they're sick of normal politicians, and it's going really well.
Good stuff. Good stuff. You're a local lad. No parachuting of candidates required in the NIP, but what does it mean for you to be standing for your local area? What is your background, and why do you think you would make a great MP for Wakefield?
Well, I'm 46 years old. I grew up. My politics grew up I was first introduced with sort of politics as an 8-year-old on the picket lines of the 1984 miners' strike. My mum would drop us off at the picket hut, and as an 8-year-old, you're bored. You're listening to old people talk about stuff that you don't really understand. And when you're there, everyone's pitching in. This is for your future. We're doing this for your future. If we don't do this, you won't have a future. Always back Labour because they're the ones that are always backing us, and they're the only ones that will overturn everything that's going on. And you look at it, and then you grow up at 19, and you're able to go to the polling station and vote for the very first time, and that's what you do. You put your cross in the box for Labour, and then you're like waiting for these promises that you were promised by people that you looked up to, that you grew up with all your life, and then nothing happens. Nothing at all happens. They don't do what they're promised to do. And you then have a family yourself, and you look at what's going on, and you think it's happening again. These people are not going to have the same future. They're not. I won't say that our future at that time was good, but like you look at my kids now. One of them's turning 18 soon. One of them's doing their exams. I absolutely fear what is going to happen to them. I don't. My son's already told me he doesn't want to live in this country. He's wanting to go, and I'm like, do it. I lived 8.5 years in Germany, and amongst all that, and you saw things how the Germans dealt with it all. And you come home here and you think, that's the Germany, that's Germans. Ours is going to be a lot better, but like no. It's like we're 20, maybe 30 years behind them.
Yeah, it does feel like this country's been held back something awful ever since. I think we're probably of the same generation here because, I grew up in the 80s as well. I saw my parents struggle with unemployment, struggle with bills, struggle under Thatcherism. Let's call it what it is. And every single government ever since, whether they're Tory or Labour, have been the same. They haven't really deviated from anything. And obviously we did have that blip in the Labour Party where we thought, hang on a minute, maybe this is the Labour Party that we were always taught about and told about, that was going to be wonderful and stand up for the working class. But sadly, it's right back to where it was before now. That very much seems to be the way things have gone. Is that what's prompted you to actually become a politician? Because you don't have any kind of political background. You're a Sparky by trade, aren't you?
Well, yeah. Did it prompt me to stand for Wakefield? No, it didn't prompt me to stand for Wakefield. What prompted me to stand for Wakefield is I looked at the candidates and I looked at the policies that they were putting across, and they weren't the ones that I believed in. Did it prompt me to leave the Labour Party? Because I was a member of the Labour Party. Like I said, I supported Labour for 36 years. The last 10 years of that, 11 years of that was actually a card carrying member. I was in the army. You're supposed to be apolitical when you're in the military, but as soon as Labour lost the general election, I thought they need the support, so I joined. I just couldn't deal with the backstabbing that was going on in that party, and I thought there's absolutely no way any meaningful policies are going to come from that party, because they're not going to let it happen. The only way you're going to be able to deal with it is from the outside. I mean, it's all right, you know, other Labour politicians saying stay and fight. You can't stay and fight if the odds are against you. You've got to take it from the outside. You've got to take them out where it hurts, and where it hurts is in their seats. You've got to take their seats out, and unfortunately, you've got to take the Labour seats out. You know, the ones that are causing the problems within the party. And once you take one out, they will stand up and listen.
Yeah, they'll have to. They'll have to hit them where that hurts, to make them think twice, to make them realise actually they've got to have some policies at some point. They can't just keep riding on the coattails of not being Boris Johnson, because that seems to be their only tactic right now. Is that Johnson has done so much to embarrass this country and shame his office that Starmer and his team just give the impression that, well, why do we need policies for? We just don't need to be him. But of course, that doesn't offer the public anything either. And that ultimately is why you're supposed to go into politics. Do you not go into it to make a difference to ordinary people's lives?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the Conservatives, if we look back on the last general election, they didn't really have any manifesto. They ran on getting Brexit done. Right? They didn't have any other real policies, you know, and for Labour to have the policies that people needed, but one policy that went against the grain, that basically turned that campaign, you know, into an unwinnable cause after everybody was telling them, was no second referendum. And they managed to, well, Keir, because he was the Brexit shadow secretary at the time, he managed to get that policy through. And no way, you know, the more you look at it, you see it's a set up job, really. You look at that, and that was a set up job. I wouldn't be sat here if things were different. I'm sat here campaigning for Wakefield because it needs help. It needs them socialist policies. It needs the policies of renationalisation. You know, it needs investment. You know, them people are worth more than every one of them politicians in Westminster, and they need to understand that they don't need, you know, the main two. You don't need the Tories, you don't need Labour, right? You vote for Labour on the 23rd, you're just going to make Wakefield another brick in the wall, you know. Vote for the Independence Party, it'll be a darker red. A dark red brick in the wall.
Red, real red. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you are the socialist candidate, the only one standing amongst this lineup. We'll come on to that in a little bit. You've mentioned Brexit, and I think it would be remiss of me to not mention that this by-election is being held 6 years to the day after the Brexit vote. And as you say, it was a red wall seat lost by Labour to the Tories last time out as well. Leaving aside who voted what, because frankly that's a moot point now, I think. What has been the effect of Brexit in Wakefield since?
Well, Boris has poorly delivered his Brexit. His oven-ready Brexit. I'm not sure where he got that oven-ready Brexit from. I don't even think he got it from Lidl. He must have got it from some other shop.
It was a Christmas time, wasn't it? I think he must have been reading the packaging on a few turkeys.
Yeah, well, it is a turkey, isn't it? It is a turkey. I mean, you know, nothing what he's saying is coming off, and we're suffering from it. You know, what we're seeing, you know, with the cost of living now, is going to be worse by Christmas. I think regardless of how anyone voted in 2016, we agree that the Tories has completely mismanaged it. You know, but a lot of Wakefield's economic problems go back decades. In 1981, there was 33,000 manufacturing jobs in Wakefield. In 2019, it was just 19,000. And many of the jobs that replace them don't offer living wages or stable hours. You know, Wakefield's funding from central government has been cut 30%. since 2010. So local services have been gutted. So while Johnson's Brexit has been a mess, and has made things worse, the managed decline of the North runs deeper than any of the problems of the last few years.
Is this what led? I mean, you've mentioned a couple of times now that you're a former Labour member, as am I. We both left for very similar reasons, frankly. But is this what has attracted you to the Northern Independence Party in particular? The way the North has been treated over decades now, and the need to put the North first.
Yeah, well, my mum, she lived in Colchester, which is in the south, Essex. Very conservative seat. It's flip-flop between Conservatives and Liberal Democrats for years. And I was, I lived up in Yorkshire. And I'd noticed this because basically my holidays as a kid was going down Colchester to see my family. And you go from one household and one family of the north to one of the south, and it's like they have everything and, everything's nice and rosy for them. But then you come north and you can see the definite, the north-south divide. It's not just a economic thing. It's in with the I think it's in with the makeup of the country. What got me into it was chuffing out.
Not to put you on the spot or anything.
I'm going on one there. I forgot your question.
Why the Northern Independence Party? Why
the Northern Independence Party? Well, obviously, with what happened with Labour, I was a member of that, and I just couldn't bear going through another 40 years of waiting. I'm 46. Another 40 years of waiting for things to happen, for things that need to happen. I couldn't do it, and I just went, looking on the internet. I heard of Northern Independence Party. I clicked on it, read their manifesto, and that was like, that is everything them old boys around that bin were telling me that could happen, that should happen. And it's what's needed. And I suggest to anybody, no matter where they are in the country, click on, read the manifesto, right? You'll understand why people are going to go and join the Northern Independence Party.
Yeah, I've made up a little ticker to go along the bottom of the screen there. Visit freethenorth.co.uk. You can find out about Christopher Jones there, and also about the Northern Independence Party manifesto and everything they stand for, because obviously there's a lot to it and we can't cover it all in one programme. That would be rather impossible, not to mention a bit long-winded, but it's all there and it's good stuff, and it's definitely worth reading because they're policies that really will make a difference to people's lives. And of course, the biggest thing with people's lives right now is that cost of living crisis hitting everybody hard, not just Wakefield. It's a national disaster, frankly. The government's tinkering with it. There's no lasting measures, just temporary sticking plaster solutions like that 5 pence off fuel duty in March, which they still crow about, but prices have risen by more than 20 pence on average since then. It's been completely wiped out. The energy bills are unaffordable for so many, and again, the government is offering just one-off cash payments. There's no meaningful change, essentially hoping prices are going to go down, even though we know in October they're set to go up again. And the Northern Independence Party are the only party in this by-election proposing renationalisation as the solution. So what would you campaign to see renationalised in Parliament, and how would this reduce costs to consumers in Wakefield?
Water, power, buses, rail, the mail, telecom. We all use them, and there might be little changes that they're doing, but or little rises in prices. But when you look to places like Germany, because the public own them, or the government can control them, they can control the prices, and they can control the impact of the cost of living. You're seeing it with the Germans introducing that €9 ticket for buses and rail across the country. I mean, that's something. If we had our railways back into public ownership, and we had public buses and other public transport under that umbrella, we could possibly do that ourselves. You know, introduce a flat fee that could get you anywhere and everywhere. But, you know, the cost of fuel is stopping people from moving about. I mean, people are having to ration the fuel so they can just go to work, to basically buy the same fuel that's going to go up next week or whenever, so they can just go to work. So I wouldn't call this a national a cost of living crisis. This is coming to a cost of existence crisis. We are just going to be living to exist or working to exist. It's going that way. I mean, I'm not a rich person at all, you know, and me and the missus, we're always going on about the cost of things. And yeah, I was stunned the other day. A week shopping or 2 weeks shopping that we would normally get was close on to £150, and that's just for a week of 4 people in the house. Yes, we had to buy, you know, things like cleaning, you know, bleach and soap powder and stuff like that. But like, they're essentials. You need to clean yourself. You need to keep yourself, you know, keep yourself going. And you know, a month's worth of what would have been a month's worth of money to spend on shopping had gone in, you know, gone on like 2 weeks. Maybe it might have even been less than that. We need to kick out the fat cats, don't we? Because they're price gouging everything. You know,
that is one point I was going to bring up. Actually, you're quite right to describe it as a cost of existence crisis. A lot of other people have called it a cost of greed crisis because, of course, the profits that are being made right now, they're record-breaking profits, even though people are paying more and more and more for stuff. And not long ago, especially at the fuel pump, because I mean, I've got a disabled daughter and my wife's disabled as well. We run a Motability car. I have to run that car. But there's no more assistance, no more help to pay to put the fuel in the tank. That's going up and up and up. And of course, when you're disabled and you're looking after people at home, your income is very much fixed. But of course, the profits are going mad. Wholesale prices of fuel actually went down not long ago, and yet the prices just carried on going up. Why aren't the government doing absolutely nothing, frankly, to help people with this? Because it seems obvious they could do an awful lot more and put an awful lot of pressure on these people that are doing this. Is it all about donors?
It is donors, isn't it? I mean, you look at Boris Johnson and the others; they all should be wearing Formula One motor suits, you know, with all the sponsors that they have. You know, that should be a law, to be honest. If you're taking a donor from anyone, you should actually wear the donor, you know, on camera, so people know who's actually paying for you. Yeah. I
mean, look,
I'm finding it hard to find words because it makes me. I'm absolutely raging.
It does, because we're on the receiving end of it. You and I, ordinary working class left-wing people, we are on the receiving end of it, like so many other people. And also, there's some envy as well. The other thing that's making me particularly angry about this is looking at how other European countries are dealing with it. I mean, for example, France, their energy price rises were capped at 4%. Ours went up, 51%, and they're set to go up again in October. It's crazy. But then I think about it and think, well, hang on a moment. We get an awful lot of our energy from EDF. That is a French-owned company. Are we paying more to subsidize their citizens because Tories and successive capitalist governments just insisted on privatizing everything, sold it off, and these other nations actually bought up our infrastructures?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to put this across to people who don't want to, you know, who either don't want to listen, don't find it interesting, don't understand it. But we owned everything at one point. You know, the money that we was spending, you know, the money that we would spend on bills back then would be pumped back into the system, which basically, you know, it made everybody, you know, better. You know, the government still hands out subsidies to these privatized companies in the same level that they were doing before they were privatized. So it's not saved the government or the taxpayer any other, you know, no money whatsoever. All it's done is put that money that we pay in taxes to the government, that pumps it out as subsidies into the shareholders' hands. So in effect, our government could be, like you said, subsidising all the nationalised utilities, like you said, EDF in France, and all across Europe, Arriva and all the others that we're seeing. It could be what you've just had, what you've just said there. We could be subsidising the rest of Europe for their cost of living crisis by sacrificing ourselves.
Yeah. And it's, of course, it's not just energy we're talking about. I mean, the other thing I could quite easily, it's very relevantly and very obviously we can point to at the moment, given the strikes that are coming related to the railways at the moment. Most of our railway infrastructure was bought up by the Dutch, the German, and the French. And our ticket prices go up year on year on year, and we get a worse and worse service for it. And of course, wages are being depressed across the board, across all the people who work in the rail network. And of course, now they're having a strong union like the RMT. They're going to do something about it. In Wakefield, there's actually been a bit of strike action under discussion in your neck of the woods as well. After all these talk of rail strike action, this big march we had in London over the weekend, more strikes are mooted to be coming. Teachers, nurses, and others. National strike, maybe. I don't know what you think might think of that, but Labour's national leadership have just condemned all of this, and they're supposed to be the party of the trade unions, the party of the workers. And I'll just come into the local point. There is striking workers at Arriva buses that I know, have commented on in particular, where Labour's absent again. What's going on with Arriva? What's that strike action about? And what position are the Northern Independence Party taking regarding that and all industrial action?
We're taking the stance that we support the workers. Now, if the workers feel the need to strike, we support them fully. The unions are there for a reason. Nobody wants to strike, right? Let's just make this clear. They're not doing it because they feel like a day off. They're not doing it because they want to upset the public or whoever. They're not doing it in spite. They're doing it because they have a need. They have problems. Whether it's wages, whether it's conditions, whether it's safety. We should support these unions and these strikes, no matter what union it is. If the workers have voted to strike, we need to support them. You don't cross picket lines. You support the strike. You support the strikes. These people are delivering services that everybody uses, whether it's getting on a bus to go to school or work, whether it's getting on a train to go to a business meeting or go on a day trip, whether it's you needing to go to hospital, or your kids, your kids' education. It's their future. If the teachers feel the need that they've got to strike to stop certain things happening that's being pushed through, we all have the duty to stand behind them people, because people in power, they don't take your rights away in a wanna. They won't take it like, right, we're just taking that right away. They'll chip away at it until it's worthless, until you don't even know you've lost it. And that's what's happened over the last 40 years.
Yeah, trade union rules have come in. They've been more and more vicious as time's gone on. Every Labour government that's come in since then has failed to repeal them, which in and of itself is a disgrace. But then, frankly, the Labour governments we've had haven't really, not in my opinion, been worthy of calling themselves the name. I can't speak for the situation at Arriva in the north, though. I'm unfamiliar with the case there in Wakefield. Could you elaborate on what's going on there?
Yeah, Arriva, they're striking for fair wages. The transport, transport is vital to our community, and that's why it's so important that people who keep running the buses are fairly paid. All this goes to show is that privatized companies cannot be trusted to run important public services. Labour's candidate, was remarkably quiet on the issue, and Labour centrally is, the strikes should not go ahead. The party that my dad and his mates were saying, that the workers, the party that backs the workers has basically turned around and said the strike should not go ahead. I was speaking to them guys on the picket lines, right? They didn't want to, it's not all about the wages. It's about some of the conditions. One of them was telling me that, their break times have been cut. They can do 8 hours on a bus without having a toilet break. It's not just, that's why I thought, I was like, without a toilet break, and then you get violent passengers and stuff like that, and they're locked behind that little cabinet. They're doing more and more shifts and stuff like that. It's not all about the wages, it's about the conditions, and we've got to understand that it's not, when the press will say it's all about wages, right? But it's not always the underlying thing. It could be, a strike could be called because of dangerous work practices. We've got, when you hear strike, you've got to look at why people are striking. Don't just listen to what the news is telling you. They won't tell you. Talk to the people that are in, go to the picket lines and talk to them, right? They'll warmly, they'll welcome you. They'll welcome you because you're willing to engage with them, because the whole point of a strike is to them to let people hear what's going on. They want to tell you what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, a strike is an action of last resort. It's not, as you say, not what anyone wants to do. The negotiations that unions conduct with employers on ordinary workers' behalf, because all trade unions ultimately are just funded by their members, ordinary people paying a small due each month just to insure themselves against their employers' bad behavior or anything they think they might be able to get away with. It's just a protection, essentially.
It's job insurance, isn't it? You have car insurance, you have house insurance. Join a union and get job insurance. I mean, that will protect you from greedy bosses. Labour won't do that. No,
exactly so. And I mean, as much as people and the press, especially the right-wing press, will fixate on their greedy, look at how much money these train drivers are on. It's not just train drivers anyway, but when you consider that the 70 top network rail executives between them bring home about £15 million, who's if they can afford to be paid that, why can workers not why can they not afford to pay ordinary workers from signal staff up to the drivers the wages to which they're expected to, they can have to live their ordinary lives and be able to pay their bills and look after their families. And if they're earning a decent wage, that's because trade unions have fought and helped them to win that. And if your union is, or if you aren't in a union and you're moaning about your own wage and what have you, then join one or ask your union why you're not getting a bit more as well, because it's what they're there to do ultimately. And to not support the unions is to not support your own class, essentially, because they're there to fight on our behalves, and absolutely everybody should support them, and shame on anybody that isn't doing that. Now, you brought up Labour and it's sort of not supporting the unions, kind of abandoning its roots again, essentially, under its current leadership again, if you can call it that. It's been very, very silent on one of the latest Tory shambles, causing most offence recently, and that's the deportations to Rwanda. It's an appalling way to treat people fleeing war zones, state-sanctioned people trafficking, I've heard it called. People hoping for a better chance after picking up the pieces of their lives, fleeing war zones or what have you. I'm interested in what the Northern Independence Party position is. Is Wakefield a welcoming place for refugees? And what would you do to challenge Tory action and Labour inaction in Parliament on this?
Wakefield has a rich and diverse history, with many people coming together from all backgrounds to make a great town. The Conservatives' despicable, illegal decision to deport asylum seekers, shipping people to Rwanda is outrageous. Didn't we not abandon that policy like hundreds of years ago when we started, deporting people to Australia? It's weird. Why are we doing this? I was a peacekeeper in Kosovo and in Iraq, and these people who were from war-torn areas have got nothing. They stand at the side of the roads and they beg for water. They'll beg for anything. They've got nothing. There was one little girl I remember. She was no more than 5 years old, and she was stood at that side of the road, and she was like that. She was hungry, so you throw your packed lunch out, and out the snatch, and she was so happy with that. They have nothing, and when you've got nothing, you get desperate. You just need to go somewhere safe. So I wouldn't trust the Tories. I wouldn't trust the Tories, and I'm ashamed that Labour hasn't actually been more vocal on this policy, because these are people. They're not numbers. They're not things, right? These are people, who have got nothing. They've got nothing. They're needing help, right? And if you're getting moved on from other countries, right, and basically forced to cross where we, cross to us, we have a duty. We have a duty of care, not just a duty of care. We're better than this. We're British. We should be helping these people.
Yeah, we have an international obligation to do so. We're signatories to a convention that says that these people have every right to claim asylum here if they come here to try and claim it. But the raison d'etre of successive governments seems to be to try and, well, let's cut off every safe route for them to be able to do so, and then they won't be able to. So then, of course, the media starts trotting out these lines about, oh, they're all entering the country illegally. But of course, it's a basic human right to be able to claim asylum in a country. Just because they're now having to get in a boat and risk their lives to cross the channel in order to get here, in order to do that, that should shame us for not putting in place a safe route for them. But that's intentional.
Yeah, it is intentional, because basically they have to be in the country to be able to stand up and say, I want bloody hell, what's it called now? I want, it's just gone from my mind. I want asylum. I need asylum. You have to be in the country to be able to claim asylum. I mean, let's be clear, right? The Tories, this is an engineered Tory policy, right? They're doing this to basically remove us from the European Convention of or European Court of Human Rights. It's nothing more than that. And people might be saying, well, they might have turned their nose up at the human rights. If you're a human, like me, like you, like anybody who's listening to this, and if the dog's listening to this and understanding it, right, they're obviously human. We all have rights, and we are protected by them rights. If we are removed from that, our right to gather in a public space or be paid a fair wage will be gone.
Yeah.
These are checks and balances to government, right? To whoever's in government. You remove that, any government can do what it's like. And as we were speaking before, government ministers should be wearing Formula One jackets with all their sponsors on. So when we say government, we're actually pointing to their sponsors, what they want to happen.
Yeah.
So let's just be clear on that. This is, Wakefield it's a diverse city, diverse town. It's got everybody, everybody's in there. And at the time of unions, when people were in unions, you can, especially in the pits, the person, my dad would say, the person, everybody was the same. Everybody got paid the same. Everyone was treated the same. Everyone had the same rights. You didn't care where they came from, because if there was a strike called, they were there at the side of you and they were fighting for the same rights. Everybody was connected. I'm not sure about you, but I remember a time when I'd done something wrong as a kid. I can't be that old, maybe 10 years old, And I was at the other end of the village, and by the time I got home, Mum and Dad knew what I'd done. Right? We didn't have a phone, but Mum and Dad knew what we'd done because, you know, everybody stood together.
Yeah.
Everybody knew each other. Everybody was like an uncle. I won't say family, but it's like, oh, it's Uncle Thingy who lives at the end of blah blah, and everybody knew who he was or who they were. It's not like that now. We've been watered down. When I say watered down, we've been separated and divided and conquered by what's been happening in the last 40 years.
Yeah, no, I grew up in a very similar situation. If any of us had done anything wrong in our household, we'd have found out. It would have been found out about it. I'm born and raised in the far west of Cornwall. Everything's pretty rural down here. Everybody knows each other. I'll hesitate at the uncles and aunties bit because I think the Cornish have a bad enough reputation for things like that as it is anyway. But yeah, Human Rights Act, you make some perfectly valid points on that. And of course, it's not just about refugees, and it's not just about, you know, stopping assembly, which, you know, again lends itself back to the trade union movement. It's your right to marry. It's your right to not be tortured or enslaved. I mean, people might think, well, this is ridiculous. It couldn't possibly happen in Great Britain. This Human Rights Convention that Winston Churchill was instrumental in bringing about to prevent fascism from ever rising again in Europe, that Boris Johnson's own grandfather was a ECHR lawyer and one of the people who drafted it, and now he's threatening to pull us out of it. That's his own family's legacy, not just all the protections that we have come to take for granted in this country could potentially be torn up. Of course, we've had Tories before say, "Oh, I'm not in favour of the Human Rights Act. I don't think we need it." Look at this government. Look at the way it's treating other people, and remember, always remember that how they treat other people is how they would treat you if they thought they could possibly get away with it. And that Human Rights Act, that convention, protects us from them.
Yeah. You can. There was one thing that I was told in the army, and this was at the time when they were changing the military pensions from the 1975 to, I think it was 2006 or 2008 part of it. Governments only ever bring up issues or laws from the past when they want to change them for themselves, you know, to make themselves. It's normally something from the past, unless it's really outdated, it doesn't really need to be changed. So for them to bring up the Human Rights Act, they clearly got ulterior motives that they want changing, because otherwise it wouldn't be even spoke about or even brought up. We'd still have it because it's you know, it's a good thing, you know. It might have made it a little bit more expensive for people to be convicted and put into prison for heinous crimes and stuff like that in the past, but everybody's right. Everybody has a right to the day in court. You know, everybody's got a right. Let's say that goes away. Let's say they take that human rights legislation away, and they like in China, make it illegal to be in debt. You'd be put in prison.
Yeah.
I mean,
it used to be the case here historically. Debtors were sent to prison. What's to stop them doing it again?
Exactly. So, you know, there's form there. You know, we look at these people who've got no clue about life. They don't know what it's like to go on the last Thursday of the month, you know, before payday, and only have enough money in the bank to get a few bits for your kids to eat. They haven't got a clue.
No.
You know, and we need less of them in Parliament, not more.
More ordinary working class people, such as yourself. People who
so
in the real world, not people who are so detached from it they can't even work a contactless card machine. I'm amazed he even knew where to put the petrol pump, to be quite honest with you. But yeah, going back to the Rwanda issue just once more, and coming at it from the Labour side, so many of them have been using the word unworkable in relation to it. I mean, unethical, you would think, would be the first word to come out of an ordinary working class mouth if Labour truly were that sort of representative anymore. It was flagged up recently that Tony Blair back in 2004 tried to do a similar deal with Tanzania. The narrative coming from Labour now seems to be one of, could you really believe they wouldn't try this again themselves? Is that why they're going with unworkable rather than unethical?
Exactly. Yeah, Dave, definitely. That is exactly what we're going to do. You know, if they don't come out with a policy or a reaction that's, you know, definite, that is definitely what they're going to do in the future. Just exactly what you just said there. They are not going to help. It's just going to get worse. It's one of these can kicking down the roads. You know, it's something that they keep in the public ear as an earworm that they can use further on down the road. You know, we're an island. We've been invaded, loads of times, and we're a very diverse country as it is. You know, there's been reasons that we are what we are because we are inclusive. We might have invaded people in the past and made their lives hell, but we've also, when we've done it, also nicked the best bits and brought them back, which isn't a good thing to say in some cases.
No, it's not.
But as far
we still do it now, and of course we never stayed to clean up the pieces after. That's what.
No, we didn't. No, we didn't. I mean, and we're living with that now because we didn't clean it up. It's a bad case of affairs. It's bigger than what I can, what I will ever be able to do. But we stand, against deporting people like this. No matter who they are or where they're going, everybody has a right to be heard.
Yeah, and that's every sensible thinking person should agree with that, because to agree with this, I mean, it's so pernicious, it's so authoritarian. Nobody should be supportive of this. Not if they're in their right mind, quite frankly.
Yeah, if Westminster ain't going to do it, then we'll do it in a free north.
Yeah, brilliant. Now, in a recent statement that you've made, you were quite critical of another of Labour's figures, Wes Streeting, who said it's horses for courses, that there's some sort of an informal deal going on between Labour and the Lib Dems. We're seeing that in the Honiton and Tiverton by-election, which is going on the same day as the one in Wakefield. And now there are people out there who are saying, well, this is a good thing because we're getting the Tories out. I don't agree with that, because I remember that the Lib Dems put the Tories into power to begin with. But given that the Northern Independence Party is a part of the People's Alliance of the Left, PAL, and is happy to formally work with other parties such as Left Unity or the Breakthrough parties to promote socialist ideals and not stand against each other in elections, what is the difference between your party's position and what Labour and the Lib Dems seem to be doing?
Well, PAL isn't an electoral pact, right? It's not an electoral pact. We have no formal agreement not to run against candidates, each other. We're not, we've got no agreement with that, So what we do is a lot of common goals. So, yeah. So I'll start that again. This is right. We're not in an electoral pact, right? It's not an electoral pact. Right. We have no formal agreement to not run against anybody in that pact. And what we do have is a lot of common goals and commitment to share resources and information, but that is not an electoral pact.
Right. As
you just said, the Lib Dems helped the Tories implement their brutal austerity regime, and we're still living with that. They were in government together for 5 years. Now Labour want to start making dodgy backroom deals with them. It just further shows how they're not on the side of people, of the working people, and they'll do anything just to gain power. And to be honest, if you look at Keir and you look at Boris, if Boris pulled the Tories to the right, Keir has jumped into where Theresa May stood. Right? They're not going to change anything. They're not, If you look back at between 97 and 2010, can you think of any of the policies that haven't been tinkered with by the Tories that still exist? I was having a shave this morning. I was thinking about this myself, and I can't think of anything off my head that was brought in between 97 and 2010 by Labour that the Tories haven't tampered with, right? So if Labour get in and they change things, right, in 15 years, because of this electoral cycle, 5 years at a time, if Labour stay in for 15 years. Now, what people got to understand is in the elections, in the general election, you're going to have whoever wins is going to be in for 5 years. That's 5 years of them in government. That's 5 years of your life that you've got to put up with policies that these people are putting through, right? Like I said, I was 8 years old at that burning barrel, and them old guys were telling me Labour will get in and change everything. Life will get better. There'll be none of this. You will not have the same future as what we have had. I'm 46 now, right? So almost 40 years later, the problems haven't got any better. In fact, I'd say now is worse in many cases than what it was back then. It's just that we had a lot more to lose then because we had a lot more. We've got nothing now, and the little changes are affecting everybody the most.
Do you think we're coming to, I suppose, I completely agree with what you're saying. Things are worse now, but I struggle to think how much more people are going to physically be able to take before there's some sort of a reckoning. And when both major parties, who tend to basically, because of our stupid electoral system, it's always one or the other of them that gains power, when neither one of them is actually going to make any difference, I'm struggling to see how this is going to reach some sort of political conclusion that's not going to cause some sort of massive societal mess.
Well, we've got 2 years to the next general election. We've had COVID that's basically suppressed the movement that was gaining pace. We need to get back on the actual case of the policies of the crisis. I would say before COVID broke out, the government was on the back foot and was possibly more inclined to introduce changes that were needed. Now we've had 2 years of COVID. It's as though the wind's been taken out. Everybody's tired. Everybody just wants to get back with their life. And they're possibly taking either time off or just wary. I mean, I talk to my friends a lot, and they're like, if it's about politics, I don't want to know. And to me, I got told this once while I was in the army, and it was like, Jonah, you care too much. You need to care less. And that was something that I found really hard to do. But what I noticed is when you start to care less, people took notice, because all of a sudden, this person who cared so much cares less about something wrong, and I don't want people not to care less. No. Probably the same as you. We've got so many problems that we need people to care, and we need people to get onto the streets. We need people to, not just protest. I wasn't intention. I didn't. When New Year happened, I didn't think I'd be sat here talking about politics, running as a member of Parliament. I didn't. I would even go as far as, a couple of months ago. I wouldn't have thought it. You don't need to sit and worry. If you are if you are passionate about this, right, there are parties, there are causes out there. Join one and do it, right? Don't worry about what people say, because you if you can see what's happening and you can see where it's going, you've got to get off your backside and do it, because otherwise, like we were saying earlier on, that it's just going to be chipped away and there's going to be nothing there. Before you know it, that problem that you thought was just going to be fixed, it's not going to be fixed. Nothing was ever given, to the working class people. They had to struggle. Some of them had to bleed and die to get the rights that we've got. We can't let the government take any more of them, no matter who it is. Labour has proved that they will stab their own in the back and sabotage their own, their own.
Yeah, I thought they
destiny.
Did Corbyn. I know what you did. Yeah,
their own destiny to basically make sure the status quo, all the people that are backing them, because, like we said, with the Formula One jackets, Labour's got their own Formula One jackets. The only jacket I've got is this black one with my veterans badge. They're the ones. I was homeless between 18 and 20. Homeless. I was homeless for 3 years. I was couch surfing, basically, and it was when I was able to get a house that I was able to join the army, and that was basically where I built myself up. So you don't need to be, if you've got nothing at all, just think about it this way. You can't go any lower. You can only go higher. And it's up to you how you build yourself up. And basically, these people in government aren't going to help you. You've got to do it yourself.
Yeah, brilliantly put. Brilliantly put. Now, obviously, the election is this Thursday, 23rd of June. Should you be successful, you would become the very first Northern Independence Party MP. But what difference can a single MP make in Parliament?
It'd make Westminster stand up, wouldn't it? I mean, the Tories would say, that guy's challenging Labour and they've got policies, and basically we should possibly look at their policies, nick their policies. It'll never happen because they're Tories. But you know what they're like. They'll use that as a beating stick for Labour, and Labour will be like, well, we can't go in that direction that we want to go in. We have to go in that this direction, because that's where the people, especially in the Red Wall, are wanting to go. And without the Red Wall, Labour are finished.
It would be quite funny if Labour stood up and said we can't go in that direction because we want to be electable after you win and prove that they aren't. But that's what they come out with. That would be their excuse. My final question is a question I've asked a number of candidates I've interviewed in the past. I always love asking it because you get some fantastic answers and you just don't know what you're going to get, actually. What would day one look like as Christopher Jones MP on his first day?
MP in the job?
Yeah, first day one. What would you do?
I'd like to be able to turn to every kid in Wakefield and say, whatever happens, I've got your futures at heart. I'd like to be able to turn around and say to every worker at Wakefield that I've got your back. Yeah, I think that's what we need in the country right now. We need politicians, we need people. Not just politicians, we need people of the communities as well to basically say, and not just say, because, sometimes saying is all right, but like you can say things and go inside and just ignore it. We need people to do as well. So day one would be a very busy day anyway, but I'd like to be able to turn around to people's faces and just say, I've got your back.
And you know what, Christopher? I believe you. You've come across as one of the most authentic, straight-talking people I've had the pleasure of interviewing on Socialist Telly. There's no bluff. There's no spiel, shall we say? Everything you said has come across in the most authentic possible way you could. You've clearly not been the polished politicians that we always see, who can always speak so fluently and so say nothing essentially while they're doing it. You've come across as somebody who is real and who is doing this for his locality. You're not somebody going into this as a career. You're somebody who's doing this because you feel that somebody from a working class background has to stand again and be elected again to stand up for ordinary working class people, because there's so few people doing that.
Yeah, well, the Wakefield CLP had the chance to do that, but Keir wanted his best mate in there. You know, you look at that and you think, is that an ulterior motive? Why does he want the head of the NHS communications as an MP? You know.
Well,
I really don't trust where Labour's going, especially, and I don't trust them in the hands of I don't trust the NHS in the hands of Labour or the Tories. You know, it needs to be fully nationalised. You know, the money needs to come from the public. Yeah. We need less of the managers sucking out massive wages for essentially nothing. We know that money that we pay into the NHS should be going on what we need in the NHS, more nurses, more doctors, more beds, more equipment, but no.
No, yeah, I concur with that.
I honestly don't feel Labour isn't what it was, and I cannot support it. And all I will say is all those people that might still be in Labour hoping to change it from the inside will never be strong enough to change Labour. You need to leave. You need to leave. You need to look at another party. You need to join another party, and you need to make your voice be heard, because it will not be heard in Labour. You can get onto the phone to your CLP and tell them what's going on, and they won't listen to you, because it's like, well, that's only happening in that part of that ward of the area. We're okay because we've got 10,000 votes there. We can afford to lose 5,000 votes in that ward. We don't need a party like that. We need a party and people in it that will stand up for everyone. The Northern Independence Party stands up for the whole of the North, not just a little bit, right? I can't go over all the towns, and I'd like to, and say we stand up for Castleford, we stand up for Wakefield, we stand up for Selby, we stand up for Sheffield, we stand up for Leeds, we stand up for Bradford, we stand up for Hull, we stand up for Manchester, Liverpool. I could go on and on and on and on, but nobody wants to hear that, because they know what the North is. They know where the North is, and that's where we stand. We stand up for them, and we're only here because nobody else is.
Yeah, well said. Christopher Jones, thank you very much for your time today. The Wakefield election takes place on Thursday, the 23rd of June. If you have a vote, please make sure you use it. If you want to support a socialist candidate standing up for the real change of ordinary people that this country badly needs, then Christopher Jones is the only option on the ballot for you. Thank you very much for your time, Christopher. Cheers, folks.
Cheers, bud.